guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you guys are as happy and excited as I am for the new year that's ahead of us. And with that being said, I wanted to go over the plants that grew the most in 2022. There are quite a few of them. And I will also be inserting some before and after so we can see just how big they have actually gotten in the past year. Without further ado, let's get right into it. So the first plant that really grew in 2022 is my Cebu blue Pothos. She's definitely longer than a foot long at this point, which is so exciting. If you guys have been following me since last year, then you know that I got this plant in soil and I actually ended up propagating the entire plant. I think we definitely water propagated it, and then I switched over the propagations to leca. And I honestly repotted this plant several times in different mediums before I ended up potting it in this self-watering pot. And she's really doing so well ever since. I did have two Cebu blue Pothos, but I ended up chopping one of them up because it was just growing really weird. And I think the roots were rotting. So this is one of the Cebu blue Pothos that was growing better than the other one. It wasn't even this long when I got it originally and propagated the whole thing. So I'm really excited to see it grow this long and to have a hanging plant. A lot of plants that I'm going to show you today were not hanging plants at the beginning of 2022, and just in that little bit of time I have, I think, 5 or 6 hanging plants now. This is literally one of the only plants I keep in my room, which I don't know why, because it probably has spider mites. But if you've been following me, you know I think everything has spider mites always. I'm so excited for the next plant because it was kind of like a plant experiment. I had no idea what it would grow into after I propagated it, but I'm so happy I did. And that is my Fiddle Leaf Fig. I feel like I always used to talk about this plant because I was so amazed that I had propagated it from just a little twig that had no leaves on it, and then it started sprouting these tiny little leaves. I remember when this plant was at a certain point where I loved it so much because it was just this little tiny fiddle leaf fig that looked like a little flower. And honestly, I thought the leaves were gonna stay that size and just keep growing taller but the same size leaves. I had no idea that the leaves were gonna keep getting bigger and bigger as it grew. And now I have a pretty substantial fiddle leaf fig here, which really makes me so happy because I actually grew this from a stick. I don't know if you guys remember, but I ended up propagating my other fiddle leaf fig that I had that wasn't doing so well. And I realized that I actually cut the woody part of the stem, which I don't think you're supposed to propagate. Like, I don't think it could actually produce roots out of the woody stem part. So I was supposed to propagate a little bit higher, but by the time I realized that, those fiddle leaf fig propagations dried completely up and they're gone now. So this is the only fiddle leaf fig that I have, but I'm not mad at it because it grows so well and it's constantly growing. You guys can tell there's a new little leaf coming out. Which one was the last leaf? This one right here. This one was the last leaf here. And it's hard to see on camera, but these leaves are pretty big compared to what they used to look like. I don't know, I'm really proud of this plant though, and I can't wait to see how big it gets this year. I'm hoping that it's gonna get at least 2 feet tall. I just started using CalMag with my plants, so I'm hoping that's really gonna promote some faster growth with my plants. But yes, as for watering, I honestly picked this plant up and I feel how heavy it is, and if it's really light, then I water it. And honestly, it is a lot harder to water my plants that don't have a clear vessel. Like this plant, sometimes I pick it up and it's really light, so I know it needs water, but the roots could be really dry, causing root rot. I pulled a lot of plants out of the pot where a lot of roots were rotted because they got too dry before I noticed I had to water them. So you just have to be kind of careful. But she's doing extremely well. The back is definitely my favorite part because look at all of the veining. Anyways, on to the next one. So the next plant that really grew in 2022 is not my big Monstera Deliciosa that we're all very familiar with if you follow my channel, but the smaller one that I actually grew from a propagation that I took from my large tree. I'm gonna put footage on the screen of me potting up this plant, but this thing has got extremely large over the past 365 days. I actually just posted a picture of this plant on my Instagram because it finally got a fenestration. Every other leaf besides this beautiful one right here does not have a fenestration on it because it was a very immature plant when I potted it up. But like I've stated several times in the past, if you have a Monstera Deliciosa, or I think any type of Monstera with heart-shaped leaves, it's going to get huge. I have a strong feeling that this is going to grow just as large as my other Monstera Deliciosa, so I am going to have to find somewhere to put this plant eventually. It has to be very happy because it's putting out extremely healthy leaves, which is so exciting because I don't know what's wrong with my larger Monstera Deliciosa, but some of the lower leaves look really concerning, to say the least. I kind of want to chop that plant completely back and start over and just put this plant in its place for now, but I don't know. But yeah, I had to throw this one in here because just the size from when I potted it up to now is just crazy. Ugh, Monstera Deliciosa. So the next plant that I wanted to mention that really grew in 2022 are a few of my Hoya Obovata that were a lot smaller in the beginning of 2022. For example, this plant, if you're looking at the footage of it from when I first potted it up, I honestly think this Hoya Obovata put out the most leaves out of all of them that I have. I think I have about 8 to 10 Hoya Obovata, and a lot of them are growing. I had to switch up some of the pots. My Hoya Obovata, I don't think like self-watering pots, so a lot of them are in pots like this with a little reservoir. I think this plant is doing the best because it's hanging in a south-facing window where it gets really high sun, hence the sun stressing on some of the leaves. Just a little bit. But how freaking gorgeous is this Hoya Obovata? I literally look at this plant every day because it's just so cute and bubbly, and I can't believe it's grown like this. I think when I put it in this pot, it had 2 to 3 leaves. Now they're just stacking themselves so perfectly, putting out the perfect little bits of splash I've ever seen, and I can't get over it. The only thing I'm concerned about, let me see if you guys can see that. There's like white stuff on the tip. Here's another Hoya Obovata in my collection that's really growing so beautifully. I'm so happy that I actually did take all of those propagations from that mother plant I got last year in March. And I think it was a 6-inch basket that was fairly full, and I think I bought it for about $30. So that was a steal, especially considering how many Hoya Obovata I have now from that one plant. But I still have my first Hoya Obovata ever. And the reason why I had bought the basket is because my first Hoya Obovata cutting that I have was not growing. But in the past year, it's put out the most biggest, beautiful leaves. So I'm gonna insert footage of what my first Hoya Obovata looked like when I got it. But this is her now, minus all this back here. I have a few cuttings in this pot, but this one vine right here is from the first Hoya Obovata that I ever got. And look at how big. Like, look at this leaf down here. Oh my God. And look at these. These 2 leaves right here just came out, and I just can't believe how good she's growing. Hoya Obovata is such a weird plant because sometimes you won't see growth for so long, and then your plant puts out a gorgeous leaf like this, and you're just like, where have you been? But it's so beautiful. And they're really not a stressful plant. You just don't want to let them dry out way too much. This is another Hoya Obovata that I have. This one's fairly dry. This leaf is so weird looking, but look at all that splash on it. If you see white stuff on it though, or any of my plants, it's because I heard about flat mites, and naturally I feel like every plant in my house has them now, especially my Hoya Obovata, because I don't know, sometimes the leaves just look a little funky on the back. They always have marks on the back. So just to be on the safe side, I did spray them down with some type of sulfur solution in hopes that we don't have any bugs around here. I cannot wait for summer, but I'm not looking forward to the bugs at all. The next plant that really grew in 2022 is my Hoya Serpent. If you look at the footage on the screen, you can tell that this Hoya Serpent did not have that many vines on it at the beginning of 2022. And here it is now in January of 2023, looking full as ever. I did recently repot it in this tiny little pot in hopes that it gets more root bound, hopefully produces some blooms. Pray to, but yeah, this is one of my favorite plants, hoping I don't kill it because honestly, it's been a little difficult to propagate for me. I've been able to propagate this plant in like little tiny prop vessels, but after that, potting them up just never goes well for me. So I'm hoping I could get this plant to grow really good so I don't have to take any propagations off of it. Look at how splashy it is. All those leaves in there with all the splash. So pretty. I love this plant so much. And now that it's in this pot, I love it even more. And then the last plant, oh my God, this plant is so hard to see anywhere in pictures on camera because it's so holy. But my Monstera Adansonii definitely really grew in 2022. This is another plant that I also chopped completely back and propagated because it was in soil, and then I propagated it and transferred it to a semi-hydro setup. We repotted it several times and it finally ended up in this pot right here. One of my self-watering pots without the insert, but I can still see the watering level there, which is always good. But this plant, you can obviously see the difference that it grew extremely long over the past year, which is so exciting because the Adansonii is such a statement houseplant, I feel like. Like if you don't have one hanging from somewhere in your house, are you even a plant parent? No, I'm just kidding, because these plants are kind of hard to grow, hence all of the yellow leaves. I just cut off several leaves off of this plant, and I have some propagating because I had a different Adansonii that I had in pond as well, and it was dying, so we will be potting up those props soon along with several other props, so stay tuned. That does bring me to the end of today's video. Give me a thumbs up if you did enjoy. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Leave me a comment down below of which one of your plants grew the most in 2022. And until my next video, bye guys.